cancer is an industry, heart disease is an industry, diabetes is a huge industry, but I think the biggest industry of all of them is mental health. Back 100 years ago, cancer and heart disease were very rare. Not a lot of people got those things. They are lifestyle diseases. Some people will try to tell you there's a genetic component, but that's a really hard argument. Something might happen in your life, Ali, and you might feel really sad about it. Well, you should feel sad, and it's okay to feel sad until you finish feeling sad. Well, tell your dad that I think from a health perspective, he's better off smoking. I would put smoking ahead of Red Bull from a health perspective anytime. There's actually nothing dragging your attention out into the world. And so what's happening for a lot of people, instead of their attention going out, their attention's going in. You've actually got to outsmart your competition. Probably the greatest way you can outsmart them is to take care of yourself. I think that our greatest reward will always come from the smile that we contribute to on another person's face.
Welcome back to the Out of Interest podcast. Those that are returning, thank you so much for tuning in again. Those that are new, thank you for tuning in, I guess. Today's guest is a fun one. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one because everyone has their opinion on these topics. I feel like everyone thinks they're a master in this. And I'm going to let him introduce himself because I went through his profiles. I'm like, he does a lot, so I don't want to disrespect him in any way. So I want him to introduce himself. John Toomey, welcome to the Out of Interest podcast.
Thanks, Ali.
Do you mind introducing yourself real quick on what you do, what you specialise in?
Yeah, sure, mate. Well, I've spent my life pursuing well-being. I think I first heard the term wellness in 1984, probably way before you were born, yeah?
Yeah.
And I was a physical education graduate. I was exploring master's studies in applied physiology, and I started working in high-performance roles in the AFL, which I did over a number of years, worked for a lot of clubs. But I've always been a curious person, always driven by curiosity. And if I ask you a question, you give me an explanation and it doesn't land for me, I can't stop until I understand.
Yeah.
That's my thing. And so that makes me question a lot of things. And, if somebody presents a narrative that doesn't land for me, I've got to keep questioning it till we find out where the reality is. And so working with elite athletes, you find athletes that just don't fit the mold of our Western science. So I had to step outside the box. So I started working with yogis and Qigong masters and Chinese physicians and Ayurvedic physicians and exploring all sorts of philosophies, even to the point of, in 1989, getting very, very interested in spirituality. I'd grown up a Roman Catholic, but at the time there was enormous disturbance in the world after Salman Rushdie wrote the book Satanic Verses, and I realised I was really ignorant. I didn't understand Islam, so I decided to learn. And I decided to learn about Hinduism and Taoism and Buddhism because I wanted to understand the nature of life. So through all these journeys and meeting all these people, I just developed a really broad skill set in human well-being, to the point where I was lecturing in medicine at Monash University, teaching medical students about wellness. Over the years, I've presented about over 3,500 seminars in workplaces on wellness. I've written 700 articles, a couple of books, run a podcast, and currently I'm the global chairperson of workplace wellbeing at the Global Wellness Institute in Miami. So I've been able to do a lot. I look back and I think, wow, there's a lot there, but at the time you don't think that. You just look at the next thing, you go, wow, I need to get involved in that and see if we can move that forward, So that's, that's
clearly
me.
you've been around a long time. You started 11 years before I was born.
Wow.
Right?
There you
go. In terms of wellness and whatnot, is it being recognized more? I'm assuming it wasn't as recognized back in the days, because I feel like it's people are starting to consider wellness and mental health a lot more now. Would you agree with that, or has it always been the same?
Well, look, I think there's a couple of things there that are really important. Coming out of the Second World War, a lot of things changed.
Yeah.
And back 100 years ago, cancer and heart disease were very rare. Not a lot of people got those things. They are lifestyle diseases. Some people try to tell you there's a genetic component, but that's a really hard argument now. Whereas 30 years ago we accepted, it's genetics, but it's not. There is a tiny number of cancers that may have a genetic component, but what's happened over the last, well, let's say back to 1984, since then, modern food processing is out of control. Convenience is like we've never seen it before, like even to the point now where people don't even have to go into the office. Their commute is from the bedroom to the home office, you know. So people don't exercise anywhere near as enough. And instead of people being involved in a community and living in a community where their part of their daily effort is contributing to their community, now it's very self-focused and self-absorbed. So I think that, the disease rates are really, they've expanded big time. And really, it's an industry. I mean, cancer is an industry. Heart disease is an industry. Diabetes is a huge industry. But I think the biggest industry of all of them is mental health. Yep. And the problem is there's a confusion. Like something might happen in your life, Ali, and you might feel really sad about it. Well, you should feel sad. And it's okay to feel sad until you finish feeling sad. That doesn't mean you've got a mental health problem. It just means you're a human being. But all of those things are starting to be labelled mental health. And boy, that's casting a wide net. But what it's doing is it's selling a lot of drugs and a lot of solutions, and that's what happens in market economies, you know.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Because right now, anything south goes in your life, like, okay, you're mental, there's something mentally wrong with you, go see a doctor, and then the doctors are making bank on you.
There's this ridiculous view now that apparently you always need to be happy. You can't feel down, you can't feel sad, and it's almost like that's a bad thing. So therefore, you need to avoid that. You need to always pop a happy pill, and you'll be right.
Yeah.
And that's just, as you said, it's a part of being a human being is that you will have ups and downs. You will react naturally, chemically, to situations around you, and that's normal, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And and to take a step on from what you've said now, there's a lot of people now who have reached a level of, I think, mental derangement where they feel like they've got to force their environment to change so that they can be happy.
Yeah.
And that's never going to work. We can see that with all the gender stuff at the moment. Like, you have to accept my pronouns. Well, sorry, I don't, but that's, until everybody accepts their pronouns, they can't be happy. Well, I mean, that's a level of derangement that we've never seen before. But it's also appears to be an affliction of a wealthy, highly evolved, highly comfortable, highly convenient society, because the historians say that before the collapse of all of the big empires, the Greeks, the Egyptians, in the last, period before collapse, they became obsessed with gender.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It could be a little bit of a canary in the gold mine,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that one before. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I heard it twice. Firstly from Camille Paglia, who's this amazing lesbian professor of philosophy and psychology and history, who speaks passionately and robustly, and she's a prolific author. I heard it from her. I heard it from Jordan Peterson in one of his talks, and we know about his body of work, And there was someone else I heard talk about. I can't remember who it was now, but I just thought, wow, that's 3 times, It's, it's so interesting.
It's something that we talk about a bit as well internally around the fact that I think a lot of today's, phobias, or call them whatever you may, they stem from the fact that we don't really, as a society, particularly in Western countries, have any real problems, do we not?
No.
We're well educated, our infrastructure is well developed, we have a good healthcare system, good education systems. By and large, everybody gets a fair go. There's a fair opportunity for everybody to be whatever they really want to be. So effectively, all of your core challenges that historically used to be afflictions on human society are no longer there. Medicine, well-being, education, awareness, information, technology, it's all there in abundance, maybe a little bit too much for anybody's liking. So now that we don't have any real problems, we're trying to find, we're trying to dig up a few things that were never issues and were nonsensical once upon a time.
Well, I mean, there's a really interesting way to look at this. And I've done a lot of work. I studied under a gentleman by the name of Harry Palmer, and Harry created a set of courses called the Avatar course, which is basically designed to allow you to experientially explore consciousness and understand your own consciousness and be able to make changes in your consciousness. And Harry starts out by looking at attention. And when I started to really learn this, it gave me some insights into what's happening in the world right now that I couldn't understand before. And, you know, we all have grandparents and great-grandparents, and I was lucky enough to be able to tap into my mother's father because he wrote memoirs in his life, you know, and he kept a journal of things that he did. And he and his three brothers and their father, back a bit over 100 years ago, purchased about 100,000 acres of land out near Roma in Queensland and turned it into 3 cattle stations. Now, there was no Bunnings up the road, right? There's no telephones. They had to fence those lands. Then they had to buy a portable sawmill, which they had to get set up correctly so that they could saw timber so they could build their houses. They had to build sewage, septic tanks. They had to set up water systems to get water to the house. They had to care for the animals. They had so many things they had to deal with. And what they were faced with every day was threats to their survival. Every day. So when they stepped out the door in the morning, their attention was dragged out into the world because they had to be aware of everything. Now, you know, a physicist can take a beam of light and break it down into subatomic particles called photons. Actually particles, yeah? Well, let's just say that attention could be broken down into units, and let's just say that you've got 1 billion units of attention you can use at any one point in time. When my grandfather got up in the morning and stepped out the front door, all 1 billion units of his attention went out into the world because there were so many things to monitor. And if he missed something, it could have been catastrophic, yeah? Whilst at the same time, he would have had attention on the welfare of his brothers and how they were going, you know? But you look at now, where's your threat to survival? There's nothing. There's actually nothing dragging your attention out into the world. And so what's happening for a lot of people, instead of their attention going out, their attention's going in. And it's ruminating over things, over conversations they had yesterday, over self-criticism. Self-criticism's a big one. Self-doubt is another one. And resentment and, you know, jealousy and all these things where all this attention, instead of being out there, their eyes are open, but their attention's all in here. And we know what that's like because you know what it's like. I mean, you two guys know what it's like to get in your car and drive 45 minutes across town and arrive at your destination with absolutely no recollection of the trip.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Spot on.
Because you're thinking the whole time.
Yeah.
Right.
How did I get here?
Yeah,
Spot on.
It's spot on.
It's a modern affliction. It happens to us on podcasts. Somebody's talking and then we lose track of what they're saying because we go into thinking, you know, like it's hard work to keep your attention out. But that attention in is self-absorption. And what happens is our body, our physiology, our spirit needs a flow of attention to be able to survive and remain healthy. And that flow has to come from within. And if it stops coming from within, we then need it from without. So we start drawing attention off others, you know, looking for ways to get attention. And that's social media. And of course, if we're not getting the attention, then it's devastating and all sorts of mayhem and all sorts of drama is emerging that has no physical existence. And it's all because we've forgotten how to manage our attention.
John, would you agree that social media is what pretty much ruined everyone?
Oh, look, I'd love to blame social media, but I just wrote a post the other day, actually. I grew up in Collingwood. So when I was 10 years old, my parents left the land and in Queensland and we moved down and my parents bought a pub in Collingwood. Now, back in the 70s, I moved into Collingwood in 1970. Back then, it was multicultural like you couldn't believe, and it was a fairly new phenomena. And there were street gangs, and there was a lot of angry people and a lot of people who felt out of place, and there was a lot of violence. And so as a kid moving around Collingwood, you had to be so street smart. If you're walking on the street and you saw a group of guys coming the other way, you got out of there. You didn't keep walking, because you'd probably get beat up, So, but we didn't blame our suburb, We took responsibility for ourselves. So I think blaming social media is us not taking responsibility. And, it was interesting in July, about this time in 2019, so 5 years ago, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of television being unveiled in Melbourne. They actually set up a television set at Melbourne Town Hall, and people could go in there and look at this thing. Oh, wow, what's that? Amazing. And the following morning, a female journalist in the Melbourne Age wrote an article, and she said, I don't know whether this television's a good thing. I think it's going to make life really difficult for mothers who already find it quite traumatic in the evenings trying to drag their children away from the radio to get them to go to bed.
No way.
Yeah.
The radio.
Who would have
Who
thought?
listens to the radio
Yeah, I
now?
know.
Who listens to the radio, right? Yeah. So, but when I was a kid, when I was a teenager in those Collingwood years, we all carried around a device about the size of a mobile phone, but it was thicker. Yeah. And we called it our tranny. That's the original tranny, a transistor radio.
Yeah.
And we used to go to bed with it under our pillow. And you know what? My parents were banging on the door saying, turn that bloody radio off. It's like, so kids are kids. They're curious. I don't think social media is really a problem at all. We're just not teaching kids to be resilient and make decisions to avoid trouble. Yeah. Yeah.
That training, I prefer that training over the current day training. It's just a lot more headaches that come with it now.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Except for the modern day ones, you don't have to keep buying batteries for.
That's a good one, John. I love that. You're so old school. I
Yeah,
love
I know,
it.
it's actually
You remind me of
It's
Dad.
refreshing. It's actually refreshing.
It's a dying breed now.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
so
a lot.
good.
Yeah.
You get sick of meeting all these woke folk who have their own crazy ideologies. It's nice to get back to basics and traditional old school stuff.
Well, it's amazing. I was on a Zoom meeting this morning with my global committee for the Workplace Wellbeing Initiative, and one of the guys was telling us how his 19-year-old daughter and her boyfriend have ditched their social media and they've gotten into Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow, okay.
They've got the whiteboard set up and they're doing the whole thing, and their friends are doing it. And
No way.
they've gone back to, that's 80s, 90s,
old school.
Yeah.
John, I want to ask this question. What do you think is the main cause for mental health issues?
Boredom.
Boredom?
Yeah. I mean, seriously. If you and I got shipwrecked on an island and we had to survive, we would be busy every day doing whatever we could to find water, to create shelter, to find food. We'd be talking with each other. We'd be sharing ideas. And we'd go to sleep at night thinking about what are we going to do tomorrow, and we'd wake up in the morning and we'd get into it because we needed to survive. But now there's nothing for people to fight for. And really the only thing a lot of people are fighting for is attention. Yeah. They think they need attention from others. But I think, and we've forgotten about others. If you look back, I'm not sure what culture you guys come from, but a lot of the people that come here from other countries know what village life is like. Yeah. And village life is all about caring for everybody else, And so you wake up in the morning, you've got attention on the old people in the community and the young kids, and you're putting, you're putting your efforts into making sure everybody's okay, and you're enjoying the connection with everybody. And but now we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten about service. We've forgotten how important it is to take care of other people. And so when we lose that, we lose part of our soul, I think. And so there's a depth of unhappiness, and then it's self-absorption. Then we start blaming the world for us not being happy, which blame social media, blame our job, blame our parents, blame the weather, whatever it is, But we've lost what it means to be personally responsible for what we create in the world.
I find that sometimes we use the words happiness and fulfillment interchangeably. But fulfillment, I think, is something that a lot of people, most of society, really lacks right now. That really deep sort of satisfaction to say that I'm fulfilled in every, if you break down the human being into sort of different components or vessels or whatever it is, each component needs its own sort of nourishment.
Yeah.
From a soul, from interpersonally, emotionally, in terms of, challenging your mental faculties or whatever it is. And I think once all of those cups are filled, then you truly find fulfillment. You say, look, you know what, I'm now satisfied, I'm satiated,
Yeah.
and I'm comfortable with that. And instead of focusing on that, we've now said, okay, well, the benchmark is happiness, which is this ever evolving, sort of ever moving goalpost, because you're varying degrees of happiness. So how do we find that fulfillment, that true sort of satisfaction?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's I think that our greatest reward will always come from the smile that we contribute to on another person's face. So, I mean, I'm sure in the teachings of Islam, it's the same as it is in Christianity as the others. Living a virtuous life is foundational to a happy life. So that means how we treat other people and what we give to other people and how we serve other people. And it can be as simple as just complimenting somebody on their clothing. Like I'm looking at you and thinking, that's a nice jacket, I like that jacket a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's taking a moment. I remember getting into an elevator once. I had an office in St Kilda Road, and I was up on the top floor, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I got in the elevator, and it was full. And everybody in the elevator, you'd have sworn they were going to a funeral. They got their coffee and,
And it's just a normal 9 a.m. here.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a regular day.
And this man got in the elevator. He was a big man, and he was some sort of Middle Eastern appearance. I wasn't quite sure what. And he had the most magnificent suit on. This beautiful suit. Waistcoat, beautiful tie. And I was facing him in the elevator. And I said, sir, I've just got to say, that is a beautiful suit. My God, that's a beautiful suit. And his face split like a melon. He goes, well, thank you. He goes, I've got an amazing tailor. And I said, really? Tell me about your tailor. And we started to have this conversation, and he was showing me the suit, and, he was really proud of his suit. And he was obviously a man who places a lot of importance in how he presents himself.
Yeah.
And I noticed that every person in the lift, they were locked on, they were smiling, they were happy, That's what happens when you compliment somebody. That's what happens when you're really good to another human being. And I've got a very good friend. She and I used to be partners, actually, and we broke up during COVID, but we've remained very dear friends. And anyway, she'd started a new relationship, and it didn't work out, and she was devastated, and she was shattered. And I was having a lot of phone calls with her where she was bleeding heart and, angry and all that. And I said to her, what are you doing Monday night? And she said, what time? And I said, 5 o'clock, 5:30. And she said, what do you got on? I said, well, we do a food bank in the city on Monday nights. Come and help us out. And she goes, really? I said, yeah, we need help. Come on. I'm not taking no for an answer. Come and help. So we came in, and that night we fed about 400 people. We've got a real sort of assembly line there, and we give people all these different foods, and they have a feast. They really have a feast. And I watched her. She was having a ball, just absolutely having a ball. And I rang her that night and said, how you going? She goes, I'm better. I'm better.
Yeah.
Because she got her attention off herself by doing something beautiful for
That's
another
all it
person.
takes. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are right now chasing like temporary happiness. It's like, if I buy that bag, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah.
If I buy this, I'm going to be happy. It's no one's chasing long-term fulfillment, I guess. Like, it's always short-term.
Well, as in my belief, there's only one thing that you can buy that can make you happy, and that's a good cup of coffee. Everything else,
We were talking about it just before. my barista's been a bit questionable today. So,
That's
It
no
ruined his
good.
day.
Yeah, I know. I'm annoyed.
It's shocking, yes. Yeah, there should be penalties for that. How can you mess up a coffee? But yeah, I mean, the thing is that when you do something good for another person, like your barista, for example, say, for example, you go and you buy a cup of coffee, and your first sip, you go, oh, wow, that's a really good coffee.
Yeah.
What would happen if you turn around, you go back to the barista and you say, excuse me, I just want to tell you, you've made my day. That's such a beautiful cup of coffee. I'm so grateful that you took so much care to make me such a beautiful cup of coffee. That's 5 seconds of your
Yeah.
life, right? As you walk out the door, two things happen. The barista feels really good because they made someone happy, and you feel really good about yourself because you did something where you stopped your day and just took a moment to be good to another person. You like yourself when you do that. And of course, the next 100 cups of coffee are probably going to be better than yours, you know, so you've touched 100 other lives as well. But if we can learn how to live our life in that way where we're just good to people as often as we can be during the day, when we lay down at night, we're not going to be worrying. We're going to look back at our day and go, oh, wow, I'm actually not as bad a person as I thought I was, you know? And that's a formula.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a forgotten formula. And I think, you know, with all due respect, I reckon a lot of religions went off trail because they became a bit dogmatic and they forgot those fundamental elements that really build a happy life and they build good communities. Yeah?
I feel like in this day and age, though, people take those sort of things the wrong way. Like when you try to be nice to someone, they think you're flirting. Like I'll give you an example. It was on Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. I was walking in the city at night, and some guy dropped a lot of things on the floor. No one helped him, but I decided to help him. So his water bottle was just rolling towards me, right? So I'm like, let me go pick it up for him.
Yeah.
And this guy snatched it off my hand. Didn't even say thank you. Thought I was gonna steal his water bottle.
Yeah.
Right? Why would I steal your water bottle? Anyways, he didn't say thank you, just snatched it on me and walked away. I'm like, and then you know what I said to myself inside myself? I'm like, I am not helping anyone ever again.
Yeah, right.
Like, screw you, screw everyone. I'm gonna punch the shit out of him. I'm gonna steal the next water bottle. Right? So like it's like a double-edged sword almost. Some people understand humanity, so they respond nice to it. Some people are just complete idiots.
But
Like
can
that was horrible.
Are you up for a little bit of embarrassment? You okay with that?
No.
I am. Go for it.
How he responds has got nothing to do with it.
Okay.
That's not why you do it.
Why do I do
You
it?
do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah? And I get your response, but like I ask a group every time I give a corporate talk, I say, how many of you like to let people in traffic when the traffic's stuck? And a lot of people put their hand up, you know.
That's generous.
And I say, and how many of you have a bit of a meltdown if that person doesn't acknowledge you, you know? And they'll go, me. And I say, well, the reason you're having a meltdown is because you did it for the wrong reason. You were looking for somebody to tell you what a cool person you are. That's not why you do it. You do it because you want to make a contribution to the flow of traffic. Because at the end of the day, you've got no clue what's going on in that person's life. They could have just got a text to say that their mum just died. And they've got no attention on anything else but getting to mum's place. You know, you've got no clue. But your contribution is your act, and it's not a transaction, you know. See, what was happening for you there, you were looking for a bit of a transaction, which is fine, you know, but that's not what it's about. We just do it because it needs to be done, yeah? Like on the food bank, some people abuse us. Like, seriously, is that all you got? You know, like they get really angry. We go, well. And my way of handling that is to be entertained by it. Because like that's the fascination of human consciousness and mental conditions. And then some people are so beautiful, you know.
It's a good point you made because I was watching a video. I can't remember how long. It was a while ago. And because I hate slow drivers, especially the ones that drive slow in the right lane. Something it's always a Toyota Camry, but anyways. So it really bothers me. And there was a video of someone that said, you know, that someone might be driving slow because they might have like a birthday cake at the back. Or what you said, like you don't know why they're going slow or why they're doing this. And that inspired me to cool down and not get angry at these slow drivers on the right lane for a couple of days, but I went back to my old way. But like, it's a very good point that you made. So it's genuinely that, I just remembered that. And it's a very good point. Like you don't know what's going on in their lives. Yeah. And it's a very good point that you shouldn't. Yeah,
And the thing is, like, for example, you know, when you're at the lights and the lights go green and the person in front of you is not paying attention and you can feel a bit of agitation for them. Well, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, have I ever done that? Oh, yeah, I have. And that's why you're agitated, you know. It's not because of the other person. And it's, you know, what cars are missing is a friendly toot on their horn, you know. You know, it's like just give a person a little reminder. Hey, light's green. You know.
Yeah. Just a quick boop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a reminder, a
Some people
nudge.
drag it on.
You know, in your introduction, you mentioned that you've obviously studied so many different types of, well-being and wellness and different backgrounds and theories and whatnot. And then you're now lecturing or presenting at Monash University for medical students. Do you find that there is a conflict or contradiction between what is being taught in conventional medicine, where everything can be solved by a drug, and when you look at Chinese medicine or other forms of spiritual remedies or whatever it is, cultural remedies, and how do you feel from your perspective that we as, let's say, consumers should address these things? Like if we're feeling unwell or whatever it is conventional medicine always the way to go, or should people start looking at alternative medicine? Because it's something that we as a family look at from our kids and stuff like that. We're always like, okay, well, if there's a less druggy way of doing things and more natural way, more natural therapy, you do it. But that's not always backed by research, science, and sometimes they get labeled as quacks or whatever it is, or hacks. How do we find that balance from your perspective?
That's an extraordinary question, and I'll start by saying that I lectured at Monash in the medical department teaching wellness in 96, 97. So that was like 27 years ago. There was enormous resistance to the program and it didn't survive past 2 years. And it was there because there was a young professor of medicine in the department who had big ideas. He not only was he a professor of medicine, but he was also a fully qualified doctor of traditional Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also had a PhD in nuclear physics or something, very bright guy. But I cut my Medicare card in half in 1996.
Wow.
So I haven't used Western medicine since. And I think everybody's got to make their own choice. But if you look at medical college now, the students who go into medical college, they do 2 years studying all the human sciences really intensely. Then when they're not doing hospital rounds, they're studying how to match pharmaceuticals up with symptoms. Yeah. So they're basically coming out of university as highly credentialed pharmaceutical sales reps.
Yep.
And the drug companies have had a big part of that. And a lot of people think, well, no, that couldn't happen because we've got the TGA in Australia. But the TGA is 97% funded by the pharmaceutical industry. It is the most industry-influenced health body in the world.
Wow.
Much worse than the US. And the US, it's out of control over there. So you weren't born with a deficiency of cholesterol drugs in your system. Just about every human condition can be handled with lifestyle change and with natural medicines that already exist on the planet. I have no doubt about that. Traditional Chinese medicine is very powerful. Ayurvedic medicine is very powerful. And there's other traditional medicines, like you just look at the age of the Middle East and how much wisdom has come through there over centuries. But big industries, big money, they force their ideas through. But I think it's changing because during the pandemic, the corruption that occurred was beyond gobsmacking, because for a start, in the very early phases of the pandemic, there was enormous research being done by the Chinese because as soon as this virus appeared, they wanted to learn about it. Now, a lot of people in the West think, the Chinese created that virus because it came from the lab in Wuhan. Well, it probably did come from that lab in Wuhan, but that doesn't mean it was a Chinese enterprise. It was American funded and the French were involved. There was even Australians working in there. It was a private organisation. So the Chinese seized upon it to really learn, and the first lots of research they produced and put out to the world, they shared everything they found, was that the people who were getting sickest or who were dying from that virus were chronically vitamin D deficient. Now, if you look at your immune system in your body, it has many components. If you look at it like it's a grand orchestra, vitamin D is the conductor. No conductor, no orchestra. So when your vitamin D levels are really low, your immune system can't respond. And so that was known. And we pushed the TGA to try and get a campaign going in Australia to educate people about supplementing vitamin D, and it just fell on deaf ears. They weren't interested. Now, there's other drugs that were being promoted back in those days, but they were actually made illegal because they couldn't get emergency use authorization for the vaccines if there was any other drugs that could be helpful. So drugs like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and a couple of others, they were made illegal. So all of a sudden they weren't available. So then we could get the emergency use vaccine. And so then everybody was forced into being vaccinated, and a lot of the government was saying, we didn't force you, we just told you you couldn't work if you didn't have the vaccine. Well, for a lot of people that was force, And a lot of people have been injured from the vaccine. A lot of people have died from the vaccine. I think all that is going to explode in the near future. It's already starting to explode now, and there's going to be repercussions from it. But the reality is none of it had to happen. All we needed to do is educate people on this is how your immune system works. You need to take vitamin D. You need to take care of your gut health. Take vitamin C and zinc. Keep your immune system as strong as possible so that if you do happen to succumb to this virus, your body will be well equipped to handle it. And but none of that was done.
I'm going to ask you for my own benefit right now. So what do you take? What supplements do you take? Do you take supplements, or do you take like a natural way of...
I take supplements. I take vitamin D every day.
Okay.
And I take zinc every day, and I take vitamin C every day. And I take a few other things as well, just various different elements that are very strong, concentrated nutrition, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, I'm 95. How do I look?
You're
you know?
95? Oh.
I'm 64, yeah.
You look good for 64.
Yeah, no,
I
healthy.
feel all right. I can still, I ran 10Ks yesterday morning. It's like,
What?
and it's, but I've always trained, as Wadey will tell you, but, it's good nutrition, taking care of your immune system is really important. I mean, I haven't had, the last time I was sick with a cold or flu was March 2010. And I remember it well because I was travelling, I had a lot of flight delays, and I had to work in the US, and I arrived at my destination and it hit me like a baseball bat. And so for about 3 days I was really sick.
Did you get COVID?
No, I don't think I did anyway. I never had any symptoms, so...
You're like a Superman right now.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who didn't, and it's very funny. I was chatting to my brother the other day, and he had a double vax plus two boosters, and he's had COVID 4 times in the last 12 months. And I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You must need another booster." And he goes, but it showed us how easy it is to seduce a population of people and indoctrinate them.
Yeah.
Put a bit of fear in, and a big part of well-being is being able to step outside of fear as well, and not lose yourself.
That's the best way politicians get their way, fear. That's how wars start, fear. Put some fear into people, and then you get what you want.
Yeah.
Well, see, I think it's even more than that. I think that there's a lot of very, very powerful money interests on the planet, a lot of them big corporate, but I think even more so the big asset management funds that own the corporates, like, I think BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. I mean, they own a huge percentage of the world's 500 largest companies, And so their first job is to get the politicians scared, and then it's easy from there, So, but I don't blame any of that stuff. You can run around being angry about that, but where's my personal responsibility in it?
True.
I don't have to turn on the mainstream media. I don't have to look at newspapers. And I made a decision a few years ago I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to give a cent of my money to those businesses. And more and more people are doing that. I mean, probably the most influential person on the planet for the last 10 years has been Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Because he's dragged so much attention away from the mainstream media, and he can't be owned. And he's given other podcasters like you guys and me, the realization that, wow, we can create our own audience, we can get a message out there. And I can see that in my lifetime, let alone your lifetime, in my lifetime, we will see most of the mainstream media companies as we know them, they'll be gone.
Yeah.
They won't have an audience, you know.
Yeah.
We're already seeing like Channel 10 getting very
100%,
rocky
yeah.
and so many others like that, so they're really struggling.
And like coming back to the point where like BlackRock's and whatnot, or I was reading an article about how, I'm pretty sure it was BlackRock, they are funding the rebuild of Ukraine in a lot of the cities. So it's like they own half the country now.
Yeah.
Like they have funded so much of the rebuild. They own. I don't think Ukraine's going to pay off that anytime
Ever.
soon. So it's like BlackRock owns the country pretty much now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's so interesting because we can get very distressed and we become powerless. I read a beautiful article this morning, amazing essay, about the campaign that went into degrading President Assad in Syria, you know, and how they basically turned the whole world against the guy, you know, but they didn't defeat him, you know.
Yeah.
And the article was saying, now look, they're doing the same thing to Putin, you know, and it's that war machine. They just want to sell weapons, and once they've destroyed everything, then they want the contracts to rebuild it all, you know. And it's like, and we don't have to be cynical to even think that, but we're starting to get to the point. And I love watching Javier Milei, the new president of Argentina. I mean, he didn't even have a political party, but he'd had enough, and he just made his voice loud enough, and he kicked the door in, and now he's president, and he's slashing government, and you know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you know, swings and roundabouts.
And there's so much that we can talk to you about. I'm interested to get your perspective on another area of your expertise, which is your sort of workplace wellness and fatigue management, these sorts of things. Now, as you know, young consumers of social media and young professionals ourselves, you get a lot of. There's a big push towards the only way to being successful is that you have to be able to outlast your competition. You have to be able to outwit them. You have to be able to withstand more stress, durability, etc., etc. So it's almost extolling the virtue of, you know, being able to tolerate a lot and being able to sort of enable your physical body and mental self to get punched up. And if you can withstand that belting, you'll come out stronger and better than your competition, and you'll beat them. What's your perspective on that? Like, how healthy is this unrelenting rat race?
It's so heroic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like sacrificing yourself on somebody else's altar. But the term that you didn't state there is that you've actually got to outsmart your competition. And probably the greatest way you can outsmart them is to take care of yourself and be energetic. See, because when you're fatigued and you're stressed, your attention is going everywhere but where it needs to be. Whereas if you can really harness your attention and focus on where it needs to go, you can be incredibly productive and do great things. I remember I did a lot of work many years ago for a company called Salmat. And they've got 6,000-7,000 employees in Australia, and they look after a whole lot of things, letterbox distribution, mailing for big companies, that sort of stuff. And the Victorian state manager used to walk out of his office. He was only a young guy. Used to walk out of his office at 4:45 in the afternoon every day. And he'd get in the car to drive home. It was a 45-minute drive home. And he'd make a whole lot of phone calls on the way. And he'd pull into his driveway at 5:30 and switch the phone off and leave it in the car. And he'd switch it back on again when he got in the car the next morning at 7:30, you know, because he had an agreement with his wife. He was going to be home, and he was going to be present, and he was going to be a family man. And he was very effective during the day. And I said to the owners of the company one day, I said, what do you think about young Johnny down in Melbourne? They said, oh, we love him. He's our best state manager by far, you know. He's so effective. But all of his contemporaries were going, I don't know how he does it, and he's not working hard enough. He should be doing more, you know. So there's that attitude, but he was very deliberate about it. But here's the thing. There's a number of things that cause fatigue. And when you're fatigued, you're not managing your attention, so your efficiency level goes way down, yeah? First one is dehydration. Most people are chronically dehydrated. We don't realise the fact that our body's 70% water, and when we're working during the day, our organs, our muscles are producing energy, and they're producing heat, and your body's got to get rid of that heat. And the way your body gets rid of that heat is to trap it in molecules of water in your bloodstream, and those molecules of water then deposit in your sweat glands and in your lungs. The water that goes into your sweat glands just evaporates off into the atmosphere. You don't even notice it leave. The water that goes into your lungs comes out as water vapor in your expired air. That's what you use to clean your sunglasses, yeah?
Mm.
Now, that water is leaving your body all the time and it's coming from your blood. So your blood's got to be replenishing its water, and it does that by drawing water out of your bowel. Your bowel is your body's water tank. If there's no water in your bowel and your blood can't replenish, it can't stop giving the water away. So eventually the water level in the blood starts to drop, the blood starts to thicken, and the efficiency of your circulation is compromised to the point where you stop getting adequate blood flow to your brain. And when your brain's not getting enough blood, it's not getting enough oxygen. So your first reflex response is to yawn. You ever find yourself yawning at 10:30 in the morning?
Yawning right now. You just
Yeah?
said the word yawn.
No, I feel like drinking some water. On that point, jeez, I'm going to hydrate.
Yeah. Now, what happens to people when they start yawning, they go looking for coffee
This man right here.
or a soft drink, or they
Oh,
go
geez.
outside and smoke a cigarette, looking for something to rev them up, or they go looking for sweet food or something.
I'm
And
guilty
they-
on all counts, man.
Yeah, man.
Right,
Jeez.
yeah, exactly.
Alright.
Bad. We failed.
Oh,
We used to call it, back in the 80s, we used to call it the non-coper's breakfast, 2 cups of coffee and a fag, But then when they come back from that, they feel better. But that's because they walked. The walking pushed your blood pressure up and you got some blood back up to your brain. But eventually the brain's going to go for plan B, and it could be an hour later, it could be 3 hours later, where you're not getting enough oxygen to your blood. So your brain switches on reflex number 2, which is designed to do 2 things. 1, to slow down your metabolic rate, to reduce heat production, and 2, to get your body horizontal so that blood can flow more easily to the brain. And of course, plan B is you start falling asleep. So daytime sleepiness is a result of dehydration. So every person should be drinking a litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight every day, and that's on a day that you don't exercise. And you should drink 25% of that as soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, yeah?
really?
Because you're very dehydrated when you wake up. So you're 75, 80 kilos?
Yeah.
Yeah? So you should be
You
drinking
made it
about...
very light. What?
So you need to be drinking about...
Low 80s.
750 mils, 800 mils of water as soon as you get out of bed in the morning before you do anything.
Wow.
Yeah? And you might think, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. Yes, you can. You just got to build up to it, and you'll get good at it. And
You
I've
don't,
been...
you, don't, you don't feel like drinking water first thing in the morning. I
That's
can't do
right.
it. I've,
No.
I've actually
And
tried. I've tried
water
drinking
tastes terrible first thing
first in the morning. Yeah, it does.
Squeeze a bit of lemon juice into it, give it a little bit of flavour.
Yeah.
And just, I've got 4 words of guidance for you that might make it really helpful to drink that water in the morning that you don't really like drinking. Suck it up, princess. Seriously.
Feel motivated. Take off that dress, mother.
But you will. You'll just get used to it. I've been doing it for 40-something years, and it's amazing.
Does it have to be water? Can it be like soda? Like Coke, nice Coke with ice? No.
What about carbonated water? Sparkling water or something like that?
Guys,
He's going to walk away now.
Stop bunch of princesses.
just nice, just good filtered water. Get yourself a good water filter. Because the words come out recently about the forever chemicals that are in
Yeah.
our drinking water. I did some seminars for Melbourne Water a few years back, and I insulted their leadership so badly I never got work with them ever again because I said at the end of my water talk, I said, and if you don't use a filter, you are a filter. And they were very offended by that. So when these articles came out just 2 weeks ago with all this stuff about the forever chemicals in water, I posted it on LinkedIn and I tagged them in. I thought that would be a nice thing to do.
Like I at home, I only drink bottled water. Like I will never drink tap water ever.
Yeah, but you know what? Aquafina,
Oh, here we
which
go.
is owned by Pepsi, 21 years ago, Aquafina put their hand up and said, it's tap water.
Oh no! Why?
There you
do
go,
that?
Ali. All that money for nothing.
I spend a lot on bottled water, man.
Yeah.
Amazon
Well,
keeps
you
delivering it.
You can buy a Zazen home-based water unit for about $400 and you won't get a better water unit anywhere.
Zazen.
Zazen, zazen.com.au. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant Australian product.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the best water unit in the world. So that's hydration, sleep. People have got to get more sleep. You know, everybody needs a certain amount of sleep at night. And so the trick is to have a few days where you go to bed early, make sure the room's dark, don't set an alarm, and see how long you naturally sleep for. And then you've got a clear idea of, I need about 8 hours sleep a night, or 7 or 9, whatever. And once you work that out, you then need to say, okay, if I need to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning for work, am I one of those people that likes to have the alarm go off and then lie there for 15 minutes, or do I like to get up straight away? So if you're a lie there for 15 minutes person, that means your wake up time is 5:45, which means if you need 9 hours sleep a night, your go to sleep time should be 8:45. Yeah? And then you ask yourself, how long does it take me to doze off to sleep? Well, 15 minutes, say. So you need to be in bed ready for sleep at 8:30. That means you've got to turn the television set off. You've got to turn your phone off. And that's all about being deliberate with your life. And you can't blame anything for that because you get to decide. If you drink alcohol in the evening, it's going to take out your first deep REM sleep cycle, which will reduce the quality of your sleep. So that's really, really important. So sleep, sugar. I mean, a few years ago, I just decided that's it. Sugar is out of my diet. No sugar anywhere. Now, if I came to your place and you just served a dessert and had sugar in it, I'd have the dessert. But I don't have it in my house. I don't have sugar-laden things in my house. I just don't do it. You know, and I don't buy candy bars and all that sort of stuff. And the other thing, finally, with fatigue is I'm going to get you to put your fist and your hand together like this. Yep. Push. Push the other way. Now push equal. Now, what would happen if I got you to sit there doing that for about 3 or 4 hours?
I'm already tired.
You'd be fatigued, right? Well, you can drop it now. That's that's what people are doing to themselves in their mind, because they've got a job that they applied for, right? There wasn't some government person rang them up and said, you have to turn up at 2 Queen Street next Monday morning. They applied for that job, right? And they get into there and they get into the role, and then they get a bit bored and it gets a bit mundane. Then they start arriving at work wishing they're somewhere else. So now they're resisting being at work. And by 11 o'clock, they're exhausted. Because what we need to do every day is, if we've decided to sign this contract and work at this company, when we walk in the door, we have to decide to be here for the day. And if you don't make that decision, well, then you're a bit out of control. And your mind starts wandering off to the golf course or to the beach or whatever it is. And that's just not good management of self, you know.
I think the misconception has always been, like, personally, you're fatigued because of sleep. Right, that's what I always thought. I never expected water to be a big part to play into it. Now, John, I want to touch on soft drinks, because obviously there's always debates on this, right? You've given a lot of wisdom, like personally as well. Like I've learned a lot. Share some of your wisdom when it comes to soft drinks. Everyone talks about how bad it is. Obviously, it can't replace water. Is there a part to play for soft drinks in any way possible?
He says with great hope in his voice.
He's a sucker for Coke. Cannot have a meal without a Coke. It's ridiculous.
Oh, golly.
Just anything, like anything. No, that's what Dad loves
Yeah,
Red
yeah.
Bull.
Well, tell your dad that I think from a health perspective, he's better off smoking.
Really?
Yep. I would put smoking ahead of Red Bull from a health perspective any time. Yeah, those energy drinks are a disaster. And you see, the problem is that when you eat, for example, food that's laden with protein, like a piece of beef, for example, when it goes into the stomach, hydrochloric acid is released to break down the proteins, you know, before it's released into the small intestine. But when it's released into the small intestine, your pancreas releases bicarbonates there to neutralize all the acids. Now, soft drink doesn't have any protein in it, so those sorts of things don't happen. But Coca-Cola, for example, is one of the most acidic things we put in our body. It's very acidic, and it's very destructive over a long period of time. So I say to people, we shouldn't be draconian about soft drink. I would never say never ever drink it. So I say to you, Ali, have a glass on your birthday.
Once
should
a
be
year,
enough.
enjoy.
That should be enough, mate. And it's all soft drink. There's nothing good about soft drink. When I was a kid, we lived on a dairy farm outside Toowoomba in Queensland for about 3.5 years. And we used to go into town to visit my grandparents on a Sunday, and we'd go to church in the mornings. And then about once every 3 weeks, my mum would agree with my dad dropping at the pub on the way home to have a beer with some people, and he would buy us a glass of lemonade, a 5-ounce glass of lemonade, 150 mils. Well, that was our soft drink allotment,
Jeez.
and now people are killing themselves. And I'm going to throw sports drinks into that lot as well.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
So just get used to having water, mate, you'll be good.
There's water in Coke, though, no? just, I think there is.
Yes, we'll just pour the Coke into a water filter and then drink
See how
what
much
comes
comes
out the other end, yeah? You'll be fine.
And I'm assuming all these sugar-free so-called soft drinks are also
They're nearly as
one and the
bad.
same.
They're nearly as bad. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's nothing. I mean, I hate saying it, but I make my own kombucha. You can drink kombucha,
Yeah.
and if you get really good at making your own kombucha, then a 500 ml bottle of kombucha from my production technique probably costs me 40 cents.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably not even that. And it's very good and really good for your gut, very good for your immune system, and you can make your own flavours, lots of different flavours. So maybe I'll give you the clues on that one, mate.
Speaking of gut health is another big one that's really topical these days as well. And there's a big push now towards people having these sort of like prick tests and whatnot to see what intolerances they have. And do you buy into that premise, or is it just like, at the end of the day, as long as you're eating, a well-balanced, healthy, diet full of nourishment and as authentic or organic as you can possibly source it, that should be fine for you. And you don't need to worry about, because everyone's removing gluten and removing protein and becoming a vegan and
lactose. And
I'm like, what are we?
Or becoming carnivores, it's like...
There's like extremes everywhere.
Well, I think a lot of people have got food intolerances because they've abused their gut so much. Antibiotics, chlorine in drinking water, pesticide residues in processed foods, it's all there. It all breaks down the gut. But you can heal the gut. You need to cleanse it first. Really good gut bowel cleansing is really great. Do the gut repair work, rebuild the microbiome. That takes some time, but not too long. And when that's happened, if you focus on, you won't crave crap food if your microbiome's in good state. And if you eat organic food, a nice mixture of foods, stuff that suits you. I've been a vegetarian for 42 years.
Wow.
A lot of people are shocked by that, but that doesn't mean I think everybody else should be a vegetarian. You might love eating beef, but if you do, I would say eat free-range beef. Don't eat factory farm beef. Just avoid chemicals however you can. And the best foods are the foods that, you guys, your mothers, your grandmothers would have been amazing at preparing fresh food. I would reckon it would be divine to go to their home and eat a meal, because they knew about that. We need to pass that wisdom down. And it's a bit like 100 years ago when John D. Rockefeller took over medicine, their strategy was to take the wisdom out of the hands of the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunties and put it in the hands of the local medical practitioner. That's been a human experiment that's failed, and we need to turn it back the other way,
Yeah.
And I think we can do that. That's where we really need to empower our women to step in and be the nurturers of their families,
Because it's really annoying, when let's say your kids are sick or something like that, you go to the doctor, the GP, and you say, "Okay, is there any natural way for me to address this?" No.
No.
You have to take these antibiotics and you'll be right. And you look at antibiotics, they're there to kill so many, nutritional, beneficial things within your gut, within your body. And then by the time your body repairs itself from that damage, it's this never-ending cycle of just damage.
Yeah, I mean, my son, when he was, he's 34 now, when he was 27, he had a lipoma on his arm. It was getting quite big, and I told him he should go and see a plastic surgeon to get it removed. And I set up through a friend of mine. He went, And they did it as a day procedure in the surgery, and it was all stitched and ready to go, and his arm was in a sling, and the doctor handed him a piece of paper, and he said, "Here, take that." And he looked at it, and he said, "What's that?" And the doctor said, "It's a script." And he said, "Oh, right. What's a script?"
Oh, really?
He said, "You know what a script is?" He goes, "No. What is it for?" And he goes, "Well, you take it to the chemist, and the chemist gives you..." He goes, "What's the chemist going to give me?" He goes, "Antibiotics." He goes, "What do I need them for?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just a bit concerned you may get infection." And he said, "Oh, right, okay." And he rang me afterwards and he told me, and I laughed, and he said, "Have I ever had a script?" And I said, "I don't think so, you know." And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, mate, that's not my decision, that's yours. You talk with your doctor, have the conversation back and forth, and you work out what you want to do." And so he did, and he came back and he said, "I'm going to take him, Dad, but can you help me with my gut when I'm finished?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no worries at all." So I wouldn't say there's never a case for antibiotics, but man, it's thank God we're winding them right back. A lot of GPs won't prescribe them anymore. And for your listeners, there's one really powerful antibiotic. Well, there's a couple really. I mean, garlic is a powerful antibiotic, and olive leaf extract is a very powerful antibiotic. And the other one is colloidal silver, which you can buy at the health food store. It's amazing. It's silver suspended in distilled water, and it has the same polarity as silver would have if it came through a plant. And what silver does is it just finds pathogens and nukes them, you know. It's incredible. And any GP that says to you, "Oh, that's a wives' tale, it doesn't work," ask them what the burn cream's made of that they use on burns patients. It's silver, right? They put this silverzine all over the burns to stop pathogens taking hold in there. So it's very, very good, and it's inexpensive, and it's easy because it just tastes like water, you know. And kids can have that.
I'm gonna get that in the lunch. Wow, I've
That's
never heard of that.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
That's
very
crazy.
interesting.
yeah. I mean, we've just scratched the surface today, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an extraordinary topic.
John, before we wrap up, do you have any last message for the world?
Yeah, I think there's a human skill that we all have that we've forgotten about. And when we re-embrace it and we learn how to do it, it can be life-changing, not just for us, but for the people around us, because it's so powerful and it's infectious as well. And it allows us to sleep well at night. And that skill is just our kindness, you know. If we can all become much more kind, and especially to the people that annoy you, you know, like give them a break. You know, we don't know what's going on in their lives. And if you're, for example, if you're involved in a local soccer club and you know of an old person who lives in the street that never gets to go out, make sure somebody picks them up and takes them down so they can watch training, let alone the game, you know. Get them involved in the community, and it's those little kindnesses that we spend everywhere that leave us feeling really good about who we are, and it creates connection. And the final part about that that's really important, there's an amazing book published a few years ago written by Johann Hari called Chasing the Scream. It's a brutal book to read. He did like a 10-year dive into the illegal drug trade, and he wanted to find out where the war on drugs started and where it's gone and how it's evolved. And it's an incredible book. And he met an old psychiatrist, a Hungarian psychiatrist in Vancouver, who is a Holocaust survivor who'd been doing phenomenal work with addicts, getting them off drugs. And after his time with him, he came back and he published a second edition of his book with a new chapter. And the new chapter is called "The Opposite of Addiction is Connection." Yeah? And when we're kind, we connect people. And if you really want to create peace on the planet and you feel helpless, go out and find people and introduce them to each other. Help people create more friends, yeah? And if we do that here, it'll have a ripple effect out into the world.
That is a great message.
phenomenal.
John, I feel like if I live with you, I'll be the healthiest and happiest person alive. So we should take this offline and just come up with some sort of agreement. But look, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, I've personally learned a lot. I am going to implement it. Like that's filtered water. I'm going to scull that as soon as we're done and just go for multiple cups.
Wow.
But my partner always tells me to keep drinking as well because I lack in that and I drink a lot of rubbish. But yeah, I think we'll need to improve and up our game and not expect a thank you from someone when you give their bottle back and whatnot. So I've learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming on, John. Really
Thanks,
do appreciate
guys.
it.
Been
we
really
wish you-
beautiful.
yeah,
Thank you.
we
Good
wish-
questions too.
We wish you the best in everything you do. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I hope you learned a few things I personally have. And if you enjoyed it, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you're listening, give us a review. It means a lot. And we'll see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you're listening, give us a review. It means a lot. And we'll see you guys in the next one.